Hey guys, I am Lana. This is from Corporate to Crystals. We're back for another video. In this video, we're going to talk about the patriarchy and, sprinkle in a little bit of misogyny while we're there. And I want to start off by saying why, what triggered this video. It kind of I've done videos on this before, but this one is kind of we're at a really cool stage of our global awakening, and especially for the twins have they both have been through very intense journeys going through the shadow of their respective energetics, right? And there are twins who kind of go back and forth to experience both. So if that resonates with you as well, then I completely understand. But as you journey as a feminine, you go through the feminine perspective, right? And as you journey as a masculine, you go through the masculine collective and that experience. And there are shadows of both. So I was headed on Saturday it was a global day of action. So I was headed to a protest for human rights and decolonization and, collective liberation. And so that's where my head was at. And so I'm headed to this protest and I had to walk across, walk a little ways. And I had to cross this crosswalk, but there was a car coming. And so I wasn't sure if the car was going to stop for me or not. So I was just kind of chilling to wait and see. And sure enough, the car was nice enough to stop for me. So it stopped at a crosswalk and I waved at it and said, thank you. And I couldn't really see who was in the car because it was a windshield that had glare on it. And so I keep walking down the crosswalk, pretty focused on where I'm headed. And all of a sudden behind me, I hear someone shouting. And I turn to look and see who could possibly have just shouted this at me. And the man who had stopped at the crosswalk for me, that I had waved and said thank you to, he decided his next choice was going to be to roll his window down and shout to me, show me those titties. That was what he chose to do. And I was just in shock. Complete shock, And it's not funny. It's completely degrading and disrespectful and inappropriate. But I was so grateful at how much I had healed in that moment because I didn't feel unsafe. I felt sad for him. I felt so deeply saddened by him for himself. Not for me. It had literally nothing to do with me. And I was so proud of myself for healing in that way. But for him to be thinking it's appropriate to say that to me, but any woman, not knowing, who I am, I just felt I understand the pain and the level of consciousness that he is in to where I simply felt sad for him. And that's why I wanted to bring this up. This is the masculine collective is working through a massive shadow of patriarchal belief systems and patriarchy in general. And it impacts the feminine greatly. The feminine is forced to operate out of a patriarchal society, which is not her natural state. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to. It forces her to live in survival mode. But that's what we have to do in order to live on this planet and operate on a patriarchal society. We have to operate out of our masculine energy in a lot of ways. And so it shuts us off to our own feminine aspect as a feminine. And then there's the other swing side of that where the feminines who essentially don't step into their power for kind of the masculine role. The shadow of that is that they take on wounded feminine energy where they manipulate and control and abuse men in order to gather resources and be codependent and be taken care of, kind of like the damsel in distress energy. And that's not to shame anyone, because I'm sure we've all been at a variety of places on our journey in different energies. I know for me, I have been. So we all have different embodiments of this. There's some women who like just, they take on the role head first and blend into society with their more masculine energy. And then there's other feminines who their wounded state is like the wounded feminine energy where they very deeply want to be saved, you know, and they will leverage their dark feminine aspects in order to control, manipulate situations and resources to be saved. Neither is a good option, right? But that's how it shows up for the feminine. Now the masculine. Because the masculine consciousness on our planet has deeply embedded belief systems of patriarchy, which let's read it while we're talking about it. Patriarchy is a social system in which positions of dominance and privilege are held by men. The term patriarchy is used both in anthropology to describe a family or clan controlled by the father or eldest male or group of males, and in feminist theory to describe a broader social structure in which men as a group dominate women and children. Okay, so that's the definition of patriarchy. So on a spiritual level, yeah, I talked about how the feminine kind of like shape shifts into different energies in order to like live within the patriarchy. But on the higher dimensions, essentially, we have Christ or Christos and Sophia, the father god aspect and the mother god aspect in equal union in the higher dimensions, which then in that union manifest into the third dimension. But what is happening is because there was a disconnect between the Sophionic consciousness, Sophia, to her creation, Earth, and all inhabitants, souls within her creation, that disconnect with feminine energy due to patriarchal systems, as well as energy manipulation and things like that in the higher dimensions, there has been an attack on our society, essentially. The attack in the higher dimensions is suppress the feminine, keep her disconnected from her creation, and keep the men in wounded energy, dominating the women, etc. So in the higher dimensions, that's how it looks. In the lower dimensions, it basically looks the same. Dominate women, suppress them. You're better than them. They're not smarter than you. Yada, yada. And if they act out of line, you can punish them, which leads us into misogyny. Misogyny is a hatred of, contempt for, or prejudice against women or girls. It is a form of sexism that can keep women at a lower social status than men, thus maintaining the social roles of patriarchy. And so again, this is subconscious in a lot of men where they just naturally believe that they are the ones who are supposed to be dominating women. Women are supposed to be submissive to them. Women are supposed to cater to men or whatever, you know? And there, again, in the higher dimensions, there are energetic reasons for it. And then the way it manifests down here is continuation of that, the belief system of that. So our entire society is built off of this belief system because women don't have the power because we are disconnected from our own feminine power because we are disconnected from Sophia. And then men who are also disconnected from their own feminine aspect, Sophia, because they're not connected to their own feminine aspect, they cannot connect to feminines outside of them either, which means they are cut off from love. They are cut off from God. They are cut off from their ascension and their connection to God. Which means there's all sorts of imbalances that come from that. Okay, so let me read this to make sure. Okay, yeah. So because the masculine is operating out of a way where he's not in a balanced energetic place and is not connected to God, because he's not connected to his heart, right? Think about our society. They're like, be a man, don't cry, like, suck it up, like calling men all these names because men are told they shouldn't feel. Men are told not to cry, not to whatever. That is the exact opposite of what we should be telling men. Because by telling men that, it keeps them in a wounded state energetically. Where a divine masculine, which is true masculine energy and is true embodiment of your God self and your most your highest form, your highest potential, your most powerful state. The divine masculine is connected to Sophia consciousness, his own feminine aspect, which means he can then connect with feminines outside of himself as well. And that is something that is being brought back to the planet as the divine feminine aspect, Sophia consciousness, heals and is brought back into her own power. That is then brought back for the masculines all to connect with as well. Apparently not the one who, asked me to show my titties to him. He's still got some work to do. But there are ones out there who have done the work, they're healing, etc. So as the Sophionic consciousness comes back onto the planet, it then softens things. It then forces everyone to feel. It then forces the masculines to see their own creation. The creation of wounded masculine energy, the creation of tyranny, the creation of false light. You're not connected to God. So look, you created an antichrist impulse manifestation in the external world. Not to shame anyone. There's tons of reasons why this happened, right? So your own individual expression is an expression of what's happening in the higher dimensions as well. But look at what has been created. It is a fallen timeline, which is why it has to crumble, because it wasn't part of the divine blueprint. It's not part of the divine blueprint. It's not anything God. It is a wounded masculine world that is patriarchal and misogynistic in its fallen form. And we have been living in darkness thinking this is the way to be. And the people who have the true power within the system are the masculines. And now that they're reconnecting to their feminine aspect because they're seeing their world crumble, and within their own, divine masculines are going through their own journey to basically get humbled through their own journey to see how their patriarchal ways are not the way. And they're just getting put back into place to show them all of their shadow. And I'm sure it's a very uncomfortable thing. Based on some of the divine masculines that I've worked with in coaching sessions, here are some of the shadow elements that the divine masculine collective is working through. Hyper pleasure focused. Okay, so basically they have a deeply rooted belief system that their pleasure is the most important thing. And that's a very painful experience when you start having it reflected back to you that that's the way you've been operating at other people's expense, right? Reward-based behavior patterns. Another one, circumcision trauma. And this is something that I can't speak to, but I can only imagine how deep that trauma goes. So I'll let divine masculines talk about that. But divine masculines have been recognizing, connecting to the trauma and pain coming from circumcision, which has become in a lot of places very standard and traditional. Very deep mental health issues that masculines have had to work through because they aren't connected to their feminine. So because they're not connected to their own feminine, they can't feel anything. They're not connected to their heart. They lack empathy. They lack any sort of emotional intelligence. And because of that, they're not connected to God. And so they're literally tyrannical beings operating out of false light, playing out of a God complex because they think they're God because they are the ones who have all the power. But it's an abuse of power. And so a lot of them are getting humbled in that way, and that's a very painful process as well. Anger issues because of everything we're talking about. Not only the pain and trauma that has been put onto them, where women of a variety of kinds may have abused the masculine to break his heart, to disconnect him from his heart, to want him to like hide his emotions because the pain is too unbearable, right? In a variety of ways. Jail and prison, that anger within the masculine consciousness then has them impulsively acting out instead of allowing the masculine collective to just feel whatever they need to feel and be with it. Because our entire collective tells men to just suck it up and be men and whatever, they are not given the tools in order for them to properly work through their emotions. So they end up in jail. They end up in prison. They end up doing terrible things to people because they had to suck it up. And they have massive mental health issues that need to be worked through, but society won't let them actually work through it. It's not manly, which ties back to like misogyny. Hatred of, contempt for, or prejudice against women or girls. In addition to it being embodiments of women or girls, so like a feminine embodiment, it also is energetically. So their own feminine, they have a hatred towards her. They have contempt towards her. She's inconvenient. She is annoying. She is in their way. It is something that they feel weak. It makes them feel weak. It makes them angry because they don't know no one's ever taught them how to handle it, right? And so that anger just festers and then spews everywhere, all over our society. I also have divine masculines who have been sexually abused themselves. Whether it be, through a variety of ways. I won't get into it. But that sexual abuse trauma creates potentially hypersexuality, which makes it all even worse because they're already hypersexual. They have to go through this whole process of realizing like it's not all about their genitalia, and they have to master their sexual energy as a very key part of their path. And then they get sexually abused potentially along the way, have circumcision trauma and all this other stuff. And they are rewarded, the pleasure-based and reward system-based behavior. They're rewarded from society for behaving this way. And they're also rewarded in a lot of ways by certain feminines, right? Certain feminines, and we've all been there, there's no shame, in our own little ways, even if it's just lacking boundaries or whatever. Certain feminines will reward masculines for bad behavior, enable this behavior. They will just give the masculines whatever they want. So they continue to get rewarded for behaving this way. And the more and more masculine they are, the more and more feminines they get. The reality is you're getting wounded feminines. And because you're in wounded masculine energy. So you're disconnected from God, getting rewarded and pleasure and all this stuff, thinking that that materialistic view that the masculine has, because they're disconnected from Sophia, Mother Earth, God, all of it. Not that she's the only God, but you get my point. He's not connected to God in his masculine aspect because he's not even close to connected to his feminine in her aspect. Therefore, he's completely disconnected from God, getting tons of pleasure, getting tons of rewards, and living a life void of anything of value, essentially. Because everything is material focused and material based. And he goes on a journey to realize that's not what life is about. There's nothing in there that is God. There's nothing in there that is love. There's nothing in there that creates emotional fulfillment. So he has to go on this journey to find that for himself. Okay, so a lot of this also leads to men hiding their own sexual orientations. So if their own internal sexual orientation is that they actually they're bi, they're curious, they're attracted to men, then the misogyny could be against themselves, against their own sexual orientation. They so desperately do not want to be gay because society has told them it's wrong or something. They have such deep hatred and contempt for the feminine that they cannot possibly imagine they within themselves connecting to that own feminine aspect of themselves that might lead them on a path that says maybe they're curious from a sexual orientation perspective. So a lot of men go very deep into their masculine energy, wounded masculine energy, to prove to themselves they're not gay, to prove to themselves they're not bisexual. The more women I hook up with, the less gay I am. I'm gonna show them. When really they're showing themselves because there's something going on there that they don't want to sit with because they aren't connecting to their own feminine that might be saying like, hey, it's cool, it's okay. Like you're curious. That's okay. Just admit it, you know? So there's divine masculines who have been working through sexual orientation stuff. And then the normal stuff, drug addictions, alcoholism, promiscuity, being promiscuous. Why am I saying that so weird? Promiscuity? You get my point. I'm gonna get stuck there. Sex addiction, which is a huge one. Porn addiction. The amount of divine masculines I know who have self-pleasure addictions with or without porn, and then just porn addictions in general. Why do you think it's all free? Or why do you think it's so like readily available? We've got OnlyFans. We've got girls all over social media wearing whatever. We've got porn free. If the product is free, that means you're the product, right? So it's destroying men's psyche. Because if you can control a man's sexual energy, you can control an entire man. That is a weak man. He is run by his bodily sensations. There's no self-control with a man who is weak and wounded in his masculine energy who cannot control his sexual energy. His sexual energy is going to run his entire life. And so he's not going to accomplish really any of the things that he is designed to do until he accomplishes that through self-control and other things like semen retention. A lot of divine masculines that I've spoken to on their journey, they're actively practicing semen retention. They're actively practicing ridding themselves of all of these issues because they see how they were so overtaken by their sexual urges or sexual energy. And I feel for them. I don't understand it entirely, but I can feel it. Like after being abused my entire life, I can understand now that at least it isn't an attack on me as a person. It's men who have lost control in their tyrannical false god self, and they've decided to dominate women because they're so deeply wounded, insecure, and hurt and in pain. They need their mom, Sophia. They need love. They need God. They need to feel nurtured and safe. And because they don't feel all these things, because they're not connected to their own feminine aspect, they also are going to continue to connect with women outside of them who, or feminines, because we're talking energy, not necessarily gender, they're going to continue to attract wounded energy because they themselves are in a wounded energetic, thinking they're not, because this is the society we've created. It's very, very sad. So the Antichrist impulse that people are operating out of, due to their inability to connect to their own emotions and the also disconnection from an energetic perspective to Sophia consciousness on a higher level, it has created a fallen reality. Why do you think that we are not taking care of our planet? Because the patriarchy doesn't care about that. They don't have empathy for the planet. They don't love the planet. They don't feel the planet. Because the planet is Sophia's creation, feminine aspect. And because they can't connect to their own feminine aspect, they aren't connected to the feminine aspect outside of themselves most of the time. Okay, so this creation, this Antichrist impulse manifestation that we live in, called the patriarchy, it then is maintained and defended by mind control, by societal structures of a variety of kind, sexual misery programming, OnlyFans, porn, hypersexualized social media, and things like that, animalistic behaviors, greed, control, war, narcissism, which essentially is just being completely cut off from your heart and lacking empathy for others, and it's on a spectrum. Some people are the biggest narcissists on the planet and other people are not. Typically there is a spectrum due to the amount of trauma that they have endured, and then they choose to take that pain and put it onto other people. And the more deeply they head in that direction, the more deeply narcissistic and kind of like what's dark triad psychologically that they are. This also leads to the deep and severe suppression of the feminine outside of themselves, which ties into misogynistic terrorism, sexual harassment, misogynistic terrorism. It's motivated by the desire to punish women, an extreme form of misogyny, and it focuses on women's compliance to patriarchal gender expectations. Misogynistic terrorism uses mass indiscriminate violence in an attempt to avenge nonconformity with the expectations or to reinforce the perceived superiority of men, which some of us do not like very much, especially because we understand and know our worth. So it doesn't really work so well when you're talking to a divine feminine. So then we've got these wounded masculines who are defending the patriarchy. They're defending a fallen Antichrist manifestation. And then we've got the divine feminine who is trying to defend the planet, defend love, defend God, right? And as the divine feminine does her thing, it softens the masculine collective to heal themselves. And that invitation to heal themselves, to reconnect not only with her, but with their own feminine within, which then manifests to a feminine external. And all of that is connected to the planet. And that is how the patriarchy heals. That is how the systems are breaking down, is because energetically, Sophionic consciousness, Sophia, is back. And because she's back, energetically, all of the systems that are built in the patriarchy have to go because they aren't connected to earth. They aren't connected to reality. They're not connected to God. If they're not part of the divine blueprint, then they aren't supposed to be here. And so as a larger cycle, astrologically, the cycles help clear out what isn't part of the divine path. The patriarchy is not part of the divine path. And so because of that, we've had many, many opportunities to clear it out. This happens to be one where it's just like done, you know? And it's because we are now reconnected to Sophia consciousness and have gotten to a place where it's been brought back into equilibrium. Okay. So the past rejection of the feminine, the masculines are all being put into situations where they're forced to heal, whether it be through quantum entanglement or situations that break their heart open to show them that their way is harming others or harming themselves even, right? Okay. Let's see. So in the past timeline, masculines were very focused on gaining their self-worth through the material realm, okay? Extreme materialism. This looks like power, status, and profit over everything else. So over connection, over unity, over love, and over Mother Earth. So how does that show up? Well, they end up materially focused. They pick partners based off of superficiality, which is not love. It's materialistic. So they pick partners who are going to make them feel better about themselves because they're so deeply insecure and they don't know what love is. They can't feel love. They can't find it because they're not connected to their feminine aspect. So what they can find is women outside of them, feminine. And so they're going to turn and burn through them to flex on people and be like, look at how many chicks I can get. Look at how worthy I am. I'm king of the castle. And then as that happens, their numbers get higher and higher, and their materialistic wealth gets bigger and bigger, and they're like such dope dudes or whatever. Meanwhile, all that's doing is on the other side, it's creating so much trauma that they have to work through that they can't even see yet because they're so deeply on the Antichrist impulse, trying to prove externally their own self-worth through chicks. Because in their mind, genuinely, it's like, okay, power, status, money, whatever. That's what they're chasing. The more power, money, and status they have, the more of a man they are. The more masculine they are. And so how can I get as many chicks as possible? Okay, I'm ready to settle down, or I'm ready to kind of calm down. I'm going to pick the hottest chick I possibly can. When they don't realize that that's not what a relationship is at all. Not even close. It's sad. It's not funny. I don't mean to laugh. But you're picking marital partners off of, there's just so much more to a relationship than looks. In fact, that's almost the last thing you should be looking for, because that's someone you have to wake up with every day. That's someone you have to raise a family with. And so you're in wounded energy, picking wounded mates, because that's the only thing you're going to attract when you're in that energy. And you're thinking you got it made or whatever, but because that person's wounded, you're super insecure, so you just chose a super insecure partner, and you put two insecure people together, and you're creating a family? And you think that's going to be harmonious? No. So we have massive relationship issues on our planet, right? So we've had wounded individuals creating families with wounded individuals by design. There's no shaming people for this. And as that's happening, men feel deeply unsatisfied in this marriage or this relationship or whatever. So it must be her fault. She's not enough for me. So I'm going to go find another one. I'm going to go get another one. It must be her issue. She's not catering to me. I'm the dominant one. She's not meeting my expectations. So he goes and, finds another chick. And as he goes to find another chick, that doesn't fix it either. And then they get entangled in these third-party dramas that I could do an entire video on all this drama, but I'm not going to add it in here. And as they do this, they then have it reflected back to them that they just created a massive drama for themselves in a million different ways, because they were looking for their self-worth out here through power, money, status, models, whatever it is. And none of that actually brings emotional fulfillment. None of that actually connects them back to their soul. None of them actually gets them closer to God. And so they're completely unfulfilled, even in their highest, most powerful, highest status expression with the hottest chick on their arm. They are still miserable. It's completely heartbreaking. And that is what the patriarchy created. And so it's going to crumble, because it's not the divine blueprint. There is a system, and the system includes the exact person that they have been suppressing the entire time, the exact person that they have been punishing for not meeting the roles and the expectations that the patriarchy wants you to follow. The matriarchy, she's just been chilling, waiting for everyone to wake up, Actually, she's not been chilling. She's been getting completely abused and undervalued and disrespected and, spoken to in such a degrading way and abused. By the way, I think this is funny. My shirt. And it's not funny. It's like my life right now is a manifestation of the energetics of Sophia. I was just put through a journey with wounded masculines to show me a lot of things about myself, but also about them. Definitely about their patterning. In order for me to understand this, in order for me to help divine masculines while I was coaching and things of that sort. And the amount of pain that these individuals were in breaks my heart. The amount of familial trauma that they have been through, whether they were aware of it or not, I was. And so I was like, I know that these men have so much potential. I know that if these men actually allowed themselves to feel and allowed themselves to like truly connect, I can see who these men could become. But that's not like what our society has taught these men to do, is not to like feel into these feelings and like really like connect with God about their purpose and like connect with a woman who can truly like nurture and uplift them so they can reach their highest potential. No, they were told, find a hot chick, put her on your arm, make sure she stays in line. If she doesn't, go get another one. Maybe you won't tell her, maybe you will, who knows. Buy her gifts, keep her happy with gifts. That's all they care about is money. Make her change her appearance if she's not hot enough. Make sure you tell her how she needs to be better physically. Like, it's so sad. It's like very, very sad that is what our society has told men, like what a man is. It's the Antichrist impulse, like augmenting your body, encouraging others to augment their body. There's karmic repercussions for that. If they choose to do that, that's their choice, right? And so karma is neutral. They're going to find out. But why do you think women are so deeply insecure? Why do you think women have a hard time accepting themselves? It's because the patriarchy turns and burns through us and makes us all feel like the biggest pieces of shit ever when it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with the patriarchy systemically as well as individual embodiment of men and their inability to connect with their own feminine. So then they can't connect with other feminines who all we want to do is connect. That's it. And then also like, I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm just sitting here being like, I just want to like live in a treehouse and eat some fruit, you know? Like, I don't know what all this other drama is and like these systems and these structures and these like bills and whatever. Like, I don't know when we started doing this, and it just kind of like doesn't feel like we should have done this, you know? And it's all crumbling. And I think it's a good thing. But it's going to be really hard for people to see the truth. And they don't like people who tell them the truth. Love is truth. That's not comfortable for everyone. So people who operate out of love and speak the truth, people don't like that. I get it. Like, I understand. But that's not going to change the fact that our patriarchal society is not working. So we have to change it. And that means we have to think differently. And that means we have to be open-minded. And that means we have to stop suppressing the feminine. And that means we need to stop misogynistic terrorism where you try to punish women for not falling into line. Literally, a goddess does not fall into line for anyone but God. And so you're literally asking a divine feminine to do the exact opposite of what she has been guided to do. She's not going to listen to a damn thing you say. Period. And in fact, you turning and burning through chicks, she'll turn and burn through you if you choose to hide from your shadow because it's uncomfortable. She doesn't care. It's been uncomfortable for her entire life. Literally. She's sitting in the ruins of her patriarchal life because she has been punished for being who she is. She's sitting in the ruins of her patriarchal life, kind of enjoying it because it was all fake. It's all ego, false ego, like, negative ego. It's all masculine ego, power and status and control and women and appearance and da 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 da. None of it, literally none of it is soul. None of it is love. None of it is God. And it sucks. It was like it's a big ego death, I get it, but you'll be okay. We all will be okay. Okay, cool. I think that's like a good place to run it, or leave it rather. I hope this is helpful. I hope this is informative, and I love you guys so much. Equality and Father, Mother, God coming into union to balance this out. And not suppress the feminine anymore, and, maybe get her into her rightful position and stuff like that, That'd be so dope. I look forward to that day. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye!